In the brutal arena of the late Cretaceous, Tyrannosaurus Rex is often hailed as the undisputed king. But even a king knows when to step aside. There was one creature that the Tyrant Lizard simply could not crush. It was a biological bunker named Ankylosaurus. Armed with a tail that swung with the force of a car crash, and armor that rivaled modern military composites, this living fortress didn't just survive the age of monsters. It defined the limit of what a predator could destroy. This is the story of the immovable object that broke the legs of tyrants. Our journey begins not with a roar, but with a puzzle. In the early 1900s, paleontologists were scouring the famed Hell Creek Formation of Montana. This was the twilight of the dinosaurs, a world preserved in stone, and it was yielding spectacular monsters. But amidst the colossal bones of Triceratops and T-Rex, field crews began finding something else. They found bizarre fragments of bone, not from a skeleton, but seemingly from an external shield. They found knobs, plates, and solid rings of bone, like the armor of some medieval knight. The legendary fossil hunter Barnum Brown led one of these expeditions. In 1906, he collected a spectacular specimen: the upper part of a skull, vertebrae, ribs, a shoulder girdle, and, crucially, a massive sheet of those bony plates, or osteoderms. When he pieced it together, he realized he was looking at something entirely new to science. It was a reptilian tank. He named it Ankylosaurus, meaning fused lizard. This name was a literal description of its anatomy. Its bones were fused together throughout its body to create a rigid, shock-resistant frame. The skull bones were fused, the vertebrae were fused to the hip bones, and the armor plates were fused into a mosaic shield. Brown then gave it the species name Magniventris, meaning great belly. This wasn't an insult, it was a critical observation. The creature's rib cage was immensely wide, flaring out to a bizarre degree, hinting at an enormous digestive system within. The discovery was revolutionary. This animal was so distinct, so different from any known dinosaur, that paleontologists had to create an entirely new group for it. This was the birth of the family Ankylosauridae, a whole lineage of armored tanks. And Ankylosaurus magniventris itself was the type specimen, the king, the template, and the largest and last of its entire incredible kind. When we say Ankylosaurus was the largest of its kind, the numbers are staggering. Adults could measure anywhere from 6 to 10 meters long. But its length, while impressive, isn't the real story. The real story is its weight and its build. Estimates place an adult Ankylosaurus at between 5 and 8 tons. To put that in perspective, an adult Triceratops, an animal that often looks larger in reconstructions, weighed only around 6 to 7 tons. Ankylosaurus was heavier, denser, and built on a completely different chassis. Its body was absurdly wide and incredibly low to the ground, standing only about 1.7 meters at the hips. This combination of extreme weight and a low center of gravity made it a living bunker. It was almost impossible to flip over. The transcript is dead on. It was constructed like a living tank. Its skeleton was a masterpiece of robustness. The bones were short, broad, and compressed, designed not for speed or agility, but to withstand and absorb immense physical punishment. This was not an animal built to run. This was an animal built to endure. Imagine this creature, 30 feet long, 8 tons, and almost as wide as a car. Its back is a solid carapace of bone. Its head is a triangular armored wedge, with its eyes and nostrils tucked away, protected from attack. Even its eyelids were made of bone. It was a slow-moving, solitary behemoth that had taken the concept of defense and turned it into an art form. And that art was composed of two masterpieces, its armor and its weapon. The armor of Ankylosaurus is its most famous feature, but its genius is often misunderstood. It wasn't just a simple, solid shell like a turtle's. A turtle's shell, while strong, is rigid and can shatter under enough focused pressure. Exactly the kind of pressure a T-Rex's bone-crushing bite was designed to deliver. Ankylosaurus needed something smarter, and evolution provided it. Its armor was made of thousands of bony plates called osteoderms. These were not part of the skeleton. They were knobs, plates, and spikes of bone embedded directly within its skin, forming a flexible, chainmail-like coat of armor. But the real secret, the feature that makes this armor a specific counter to a tyrannosaur, was its unique structure. Unlike the solid plates of its relatives, the osteoderms of Ankylosaurus were hollowed on the underside. This may sound weaker, but in reality, it's a revolutionary engineering trick. A solid, thick plate is heavy and brittle. When a T-Rex bites down, the force is concentrated on one point, and the plate shatters. But the hollow dome structure of an Ankylosaurus osteoderm did the opposite. It distributed the crushing force. The dome shape channeled the pressure outward, across the entire plate, making it incredibly resistant to a focused, crushing bite. It was an anti-crushing defense specifically evolved to counter the exact weapon of its primary antagonist. But that was only level 1 of the defense. Beneath this bony shield, the Ankylosaurus had another layer of soft armor. A thick, reinforced hide, interwoven with massive amounts of collagen fibers. These fibers were far thicker than those found in modern armored animals like crocodiles. This collagen mesh acted as a biological Kevlar vest. If a T-Rex's tooth managed to find a gap or crack a plate, this shock-absorbing layer would stop the tooth from penetrating, distribute the impact, and protect the vital organs underneath. It also aided in healing and repair. This two-layer system, a force-distributing hard shell combined with a shock-absorbing soft vest, was one of the most sophisticated defensive systems in the history of life. Studies have found this armor was likely strong enough to withstand low-caliber gunfire. This wasn't just passive defense, it was state-of-the-art biological ballistics. If the armor was the ultimate shield, the tail was the ultimate counterweapon. Ankylosaurus didn't just sit and take the abuse. It hit back, and it hit back with enough force to end a fight permanently. Its legendary tail club was not just a lump of bone. The entire back half of its tail was a specialized weapon system. The vertebrae at the base were large and supported massive muscles, providing the power. The final third of the tail was composed of fused, overlapping vertebrae that turned the tail into a rigid, inflexible handle, like the shaft of a medieval mace. And at the end of this rod was the club itself, a massive, fused knot of several large osteoderms. Recovered specimens show this club could be 57 centimeters wide and weigh around 23 kilograms. But the weight alone isn't the impressive part. It's the speed it could generate. Thanks to those huge tail muscles, this wasn't a slow, clumsy swing. It was a snap. A recent study calculated the force this weapon could generate. A large Ankylosaurus could impact a target with over 20,000 newtons of force. Another test found its impulse was 370 times more powerful than a professional baseball player's swing. Let's be clear what this means. This force is more than enough to break bone. This is enough to shatter bone. A single, well-placed strike on the leg of an attacking T-Rex would have been catastrophic. It would have exploded the metatarsals, crippled the predator, and effectively handed it a death sentence. This was not a deterrent. It was a lethal weapon, a don't-touch-me stick of unparalleled power. This brings us to the great debate. Who was this incredible weapon system for? The obvious answer seems to be the T-Rex. But science is rarely that simple. Some paleontologists have proposed that the club was primarily for intraspecific combat, that is, Ankylosaurus males fighting each other for territory or mates, much like bighorn sheep today. Evidence for this comes from a related ankylosaur, Zool, which was found with injuries on its side that perfectly matched the tail club of another Zool. So, was it a social tool or a weapon of war? The most likely answer is both. Just like the antlers of a deer, a weapon can evolve for social dominance and then be co-opted for defense. The fact that Stegosaurus left a thagomizer-shaped hole in the vertebra of an Allosaurus proves that these tail weapons were absolutely used against theropods. Now, let's paint the picture. A T-Rex spots an adult Ankylosaurus. It's a calculation of risk versus reward. Is this 8-ton, slow-moving meal worth a shattered leg? A shattered leg, for a bipedal predator, is a death sentence. It means starvation. The T-Rex, an intelligent predator, would likely take one look at this armor-plated, club-wielding fortress and decide to look for an easier meal, like a Triceratops or an Edmontosaurus. This is likely why, to this day, no Ankylosaurus fossils have been found with the telltale bite marks of a T-Rex. It's not that they couldn't be bitten, it's that the T-Rex didn't dare to try. This invincibility, however, was not granted at birth. Juveniles were vulnerable. Their armor was not fully fused, and their tail clubs were not yet formed. This explains why they may have congregated in groups when young, a safety-in-numbers strategy. But once they reached adulthood, they graduated. They put on their full suit of armor, grew their mace, and adopted the lone roamer lifestyle of a creature that fears nothing. How do you fuel an 8-ton living tank that moves at the speed of a walking human? The answer: a lot of low-grade fuel. Unlike the vast herds of Triceratops or Edmontosaurus, Ankylosaurus was not an ecosystem engineer. It was a solitary browser. Its low-slung body and wide, narrow beak were perfectly adapted for stripping low-growing vegetation, ferns, shrubs, and cycads. These weren't very nutritious, so it had to eat a lot of them. Estimates suggest an adult needed to consume 60 kilograms of food every single day, similar to a modern elephant. But its teeth were small and leaf-shaped, designed for cutting, not for grinding. So, how did it process all this tough plant matter? The answer lies in its name: magniventris, the great belly. Ankylosaurus used hind gut fermentation. It was, essentially, a living compost heap. It would snip 130 pounds of ferns, swallow them, and let them stew for days in an enormous fermentation vat of a gut, where symbiotic bacteria would break down the tough cellulose. This is why its rib cage had to be so incredibly wide. This slow-moving, slow-digesting lifestyle required a very specific sensory toolkit. It wasn't hunting, and realistically, nothing was successfully hunting it. So, its eyesight wasn't great. But its sense of smell was extraordinary. The structure of its nasal passages and the large size of its olfactory bulb suggest it had an exceptional sense of smell. It could sniff out the ripest fruits, the most nutritious hidden plants, and, most importantly, it could smell a tea. Rex, or a pack of Dakota raptors, long before it saw them, giving it ample time to brace for impact and ready its tail. The Ankylosaurus was a true success story. It was one of the last and greatest dinosaurs, thriving in the rich, forested floodplains of Hell Creek, right up until the very end. It had solved the problem of survival in a world ruled by tyrants. It was rare, yes. Its fossils make up only about 1% of the finds in Hell Creek. As solitary, apex animals often are, but it was a stable and successful part of the ecosystem. And then, 66 million years ago, the sky fell. The one thing its armor wasn't designed for was a 6-mile-wide asteroid striking the planet with the force of 10 billion atomic bombs. The Ankylosaurus's impenetrable shield, designed to stop a 9-ton bite, was useless against a global firestorm. Its slow speed, once a luxury, became a fatal liability. It could not outrun the rapid-moving fires that incinerated the continent. Its specialized food source of low-growing ferns was annihilated, replaced by a world of ash and darkness. The fortress was breached, not by a predator, but by a cosmic event. This perfect, invincible tank, this masterpiece of defensive evolution, was rendered obsolete in a single day. It wasn't outcompeted. It wasn't hunted into extinction. It was simply removed. It was an impossibly tragic end for a creature that had achieved true invincibility in the world it was born into. The legacy of Ankylosaurus is more than just a famous dinosaur. It's a concept. It is the ultimate symbol of defense, a testament to the fact that evolution's arms race isn't just about bigger teeth and faster speeds, but also about smarter shields and more powerful counterpunches. The debate continues. Was the club a social tool or a weapon of war? But perhaps that's the point. It was so effective, it could be both. Ankylosaurus is a legend precisely because it represents the immovable object, the one creature that could stare down the unstoppable force and win. If you found this story of biological engineering and prehistoric warfare fascinating, be sure to subscribe and join us for more journeys into the extinct zoo. Now we want to ask you, in a hypothetical one-on-one fight, who would you bet on? The unstoppable T-Rex or the immovable Ankylosaurus? Let us know your pick in the comments below.